We're back. It's another Friday night. We're here for the next variety special. We're just chilling back and talking a lot of TV shows today. We've got the second episode of Loki, the 8th episode of Bad Batch, and a whole lot of television debuts. Chris, as the titular TV nerd, are you excited for the return of your sect of the medium?
Yeah, this is everything I've been waiting for, man. All encompassed in one.
I feel like it's everything we've both been waiting for.
Yeah, this is going to be a banger show tonight. I'm so happy everyone's here. I just want to get into it, honestly.
Let's get into it. This is tonight's episode of the Talkin TV Variety Hour. Chris, TV is back, finally. Like, we've been getting right into, like, the slow progression of, like, things coming back, right? Obviously, you know, like, because that's the one thing we didn't talk about is that last year during the pandemic, even though we still had a lot of good television shows to watch, it was still so few compared to, like, the tantamount that we were, like, that was shoved in our face in 2019 when we kind of started this. But now, with just this week, we're getting back to things. We had the debut of, not one, not two, we had 3 new TV shows this week, 1 returning, 2 brand new debuts, and we've only got more as the months are going to go on for the year, dude. Like, how are you feeling right now? You must be on cloud 9.
I'm excited. It definitely took a lot of time to prepare for tonight's episode, but it was well worth it.
Worth it.
I mean, we're obviously going to start with Loki, but I'm looking forward to every second of tonight's show.
Dude, put it this way, I literally put in more screen time, I think, this week than I have any other week since I've gotten here. Granted, I had pretty much like a week and a half of moving, and then like those last couple days of settling in, but like I've watched a lot of stuff. I've been catching up on some movies too. I watched Rango for the first time the other night. That was an insane experience, let me tell you. I also watched The Tree of Life before that, fell asleep multiple times during it, woke up and left it thinking that I'm like, oh wow, this might be the worst movie I've ever seen. Why is Terrence Malick a thing? So I just wanted to use that as like my preamble for the night, but we're getting into it. We're talking about a lot of TV shows tonight, so I feel like we should just get started with, obviously, the big topic, the big draw of the night, that, of course, being the second episode of Loki. So the first one was with Glorious Purpose. This one was called The Variant, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe you are correct.
The Variant. Basically, it's like, so Loki's now kind of sort of with the Time Bureau, but they're in that weird phase of, oh, do we trust him? Do we not? Are we sure this was a good idea, bringing him along, considering that this is still a Loki who is basically still out in it for himself, but we got a cool glimpse of the villain tonight. And real quick, just off the top of your head, Chris, what were your initial thoughts from episode 2? How did it compare to the first episode?
Yeah, like, if you guys remember, I really enjoyed episode 1. I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I really did not have the highest expectations. Now, I've also said on this podcast that this was my most anticipated MCU show of the, Disney Plus verse, which is something I've been hearing thrown around, and whatever. I'll adopt the vernacular because I can't change it even if I wanted to. So I'll just adopt it. And yeah, so out of these 3 Disney Plus verse shows, I'm really invested. Like, I thought the pilot was amazing. It did such a good job of establishing the lay of the land, the time variance authority, or the TVA.
There we go.
It's very confusing. It's there's a lot to take in, and I think they did an amazing job getting you right into your seat and wasting no time explaining things, getting it clear and concise while also not being a huge exposition dump. Sure, we had our complaints about last week's episode, but overall we thought it was pretty solid. And man, if last week was a solid pilot, I think the show is going to be something special. I'm just going to say it because I'm fully charmed. After 2 episodes of Owen Wilson and Thomas Hiddleston's chemistry, I'm charmed. They are absolutely a match made in heaven. Whoever is the casting director, I know we're not doing like a week-to-week sort of recap series, but for those of you who have been with us for a while, you know when we do those series that we do our MVP of the week. And so far, back-to-back weeks, I'm giving it to the casting director because it's a match made in heaven, honestly.
Yeah, I like these two together. They're still. I will still say that even though I'll admit off the bat I'm not as gaga and as in love with the show as you are, I will say that those two together are pretty fantastic match. I mean, I'm gonna say this every week that we do this. Tom Hiddleston is one of the best castings that ever happened to the MCU, even by the Phase 1 casting standard, which obviously there's a reason why those guys in Phase 1 are the mainstays. Tom Hiddleston is easily also one of the best and absolutely deserves all the achievement and praise that he gets for how well he portrays that role and more. And props to Owen Wilson also for coming in after... How long was he kind of out of the loop, Chris? Like, what, 5 years, 6 years, roughly, since he's really been, like, out of the limelight and hadn't made, like, a big, huge movie?
Well, he was memed about 2 years ago.
All right.
That's
hold on. Wait. But he's been memed a lot longer than that. He's been a meme a lot longer than that.
I'm talking
How long has the WoW memes been around?
Maybe like 3 to 4 years. I mean, do you count that as being in the limelight, though?
No. I'm talking like having a big box office movie. Like, when was the last time that happened? Like, 2009, 2010? I think, no. It's great to have Owen Wilson back in some capacity, even if it is in the MCU, because guess what? Like, they're the MCU, there's a reason why people love their characters, because they cast good actors for these parts, really good actors who can, do this incredibly silly material, let's be honest, and convey it with some absolute authority, if you will. See what I just did there? And this episode was fun because in addition to kind of like having kind of the, the whole mission of the week procedural aspect of it, where they're trying to hunt down the Loki variant, there's also this really fun sequence in the middle half where it's just kind of like the two of them just investigating and trying to find out like potential areas where the variant, the other Loki variant could be hiding. And this sort of really funny sequence where Loki literally they just go to Pompeii, and literally like seconds before the volcano goes off, and Loki literally just goes on a cart and literally just shouts to them, "You're all gonna die," just to test out a one theory. Like, those are the parts of the show that I'm like, so good. Those are the parts of the show that I'm really enjoying. The whole thing is, though, I still don't know how I know it's still early on, but this is another, keeping in mind obviously that this is another shorter one, like Falcon and Winter Soldier. This one's only 6 episodes. I'm still holding out a little bit of skepticism for the plot of it, mostly just because like just because of like how it's intersected right with the rest of the Marvel verse and everything. I'm still not sure how I feel as to where they're going with the plot. The one thing I will say, though, that I'm glad that we got 2 things. One, obviously we got another, even though it was a brief quick cameo, shout out to Sasha Lane, one of my favorite up and coming actresses, who kind of disappeared after her breakout in American Honey, but she was the police officer who got hypnotized by the Loki variant in the beginning to maim her fellow officers, and it was cool seeing her. And we finally got to see the Loki variant, and oh man. I mean, I know that there have been rumors that Marvel was trying to bring in the Enchantress for a while now, but oh man, like this is another, yet they are continuing to quote unquote subvert expectations, which is basically, in layman's terms, just taking the comic book versions of certain characters and kind of putting a little twist and spin on them, because this Loki variant could not be more of the Enchantress if they tried. Like, oh my god, like right down, like you want to talk about good casting, holy shit.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was really, I was surprised, but I was also like, once I figured it out, I was like, cool, this is going to be cool. Like, I am invested in the ride they're taking me on, albeit it is a little simplistic in its storytelling, and it's definitely the whole sort of, we have procedural isms, some buddy cop tropes going on, while we're pushing a slower narrative along to the inevitable 6th episode final showdown. But, like, what else are you really going to do in a 6-episode miniseries that's about this sort of authority that functions as like a government bureau? I mean, it just makes sense. And so this kind of speaks to a larger point that I kind of want to get off my chest. It's more personal rather than critique of the film. But I think because how, in length we've gone into my personal growth and feelings about Marvel and the superhero genre as a medium in and of itself, I think it's important to address. And so what I'm trying to say is, look how much fun I'm having with this. It's not that I don't, like, I'm not this bitter, jaded, sort of entertainment snob who is only in for the next Andrew Garfield, indie sort of, experimental film. Like, sure, I love those and I think they're amazing. And I thought I had a great time with mainstream, and that's certainly a movie for me that I could see putting a lot of my friends onto who kind of only live in that Marvel bubble, not understanding it all. I get it. I understand it. But I will just say, like, look how much fun I'm having with this one Marvel show, and it's because I'm finally getting some of that tender love and care that I feel like has been lacking, that I feel like has become almost a bit automated in a sense. It's like we lost the human touch, and we've just kind of robotically been pumping out these phases ever since phase one, like I've been saying. But there's something here. There's like a real connection between Owen Wilson and Loki, and there's like feeling in the TVA. It feels like a soul-sucking job. Like you can relate to their scenario, and the environment feels very lived in. It's really well done. And like I know a lot of Marvel is well done, but I think this is well done outside of the formulaic approach, but it still perfectly fits into the MCU. And this is what I'm trying to say is this is everything that I was hoping we'd finally get again from Marvel. Some originality, some sort of differentiation from the formula while still pushing the needle of obviously the through line of which every show follows, doing their part to carry the ball from one end of the court to the other to keep progressing us to the next big final whatever. Obviously we're building up to something, whether it's Kang or whether it's Enchantress, whatever it's going to be. Like Marvel has something up their sleeves. Of course there's going to be a big bad, but it's like I think each ride should feel unique and individualistic, because all of these characters aren't just some homogenous group. I mean, when they come together as the Avengers, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I want to toss it off to you after I say this, because this show made me realize what makes big superhero team-ups so special. It's each unique individual that we know prior. If we're going to at least talk about the way Marvel does it, they build their origin stories out first prior, then they bring them all together. It's understanding what trait each of those individuals bring to the team. So they come together as one, but it's individuals making up one whole. So they're still their own unique voice. Like I think Hulk, I think Captain America, I think Black Widow, they all offer something unique and their own to the Avengers when they're together. And so I never understood how a formula was working, how audiences were buying that, because it's like we're getting the same movie and over and over and over and over again, but these characters have lived different lives. They have different experiences. Why does it all feel the same? And we're getting back to that with this show. And I think that's the biggest win. That's why I'm so forgiving of the tropes. That's why I'm so forgiving of the silliness, because at least it's something different.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from now as far as that goes. And that's why, again, I've been saying this since the beginning, why I still enjoy phase one of Marvel the most. Because the trick with Marvel is the fact that even though it pretended to be about all of these different characters, it really wasn't. It was really only about these three main characters, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. And then progressively we got more introductions, and we got some other characters that I think were fleshed out and properly focused on. Problematic as the movies are, Spider-Man got that, the Guardians of the Galaxy got that, Black Panther got that. Captain Marvel, problematically so, got that. It was just a matter of there's all of these different characters, right? That just, deserve this screen time, and they never got the chance to have it because of the rigorous structure that the movies were set to. But now that they have the flexibility to do that on Disney Plus, I mean, it's kind of funny how it's been primarily regarded as a sidekicks medium, right? And how it still has yet to offer anybody that's like kind of gonna be a mainstay, right? The majority of the shows that are gonna come out this year are focused primarily on supporting characters. The only kind of original shows, if you will, about like new characters coming in are What If and Miss Marvel. So as far as that goes, I think that kind of this is, I'll give you that, this is definitely the first one that feels like it has the legs to carry itself on its own. I'm not going to say that like Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision didn't. It's just a matter of, because it felt like we were missing so much from those characters, it felt like, as well, part of those shows were trying to make up for lost time and just didn't seem to understand the right amount of story to tell within its allotted time. But this feels like the first one that's actually been able to do that properly, And I love the Andrew Garfield point that you brought up, because I don't know if you realize this, but this is low-key going to be like a subtle comeback year for Andrew Garfield, because Andrew Garfield, after mainstream, he's got the Tick, Tick, Boom, the Rent movie that Lin-Manuel Miranda's doing for Netflix, and he's going to be in the Spider-Man movie at the end of the year. So
I'm here for it. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm all for
I bet you are. I know you are. I'm all for it too, because and I almost forgot another one. He's going to be in The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he's going to be in that too. Yeah, he's in that movie too. 4 movies. He's got 4 movies this year.
Good for him. He deserves it.
Right?
Spider-Man
He really
was not
does.
his fault. I never understood why one singular person can take the fall for a group of people that work on something together. It makes no sense.
That's how the internet works, and that's how Hollywood markets movies. So
it makes no sense. But to get back to my point about the Marvel of it all and Loki, again, like I said, it's not perfect. I think some of the characters that we're meeting within the TVA, outside of Owen Wilson, are a little generic. They're a little boring. Their motivations are a bit stale.
I'm not a fan of Gugu or One Me in this. Not at all.
It's those two in specific, or who I'm talking about. They're just a little one note, and but it's not an issue because finally we're getting a different sandbox.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's an issue, but it's forgivable, and it doesn't weigh it down, and it doesn't act as a crutch. Whereas, like you said, with WandaVision and with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, especially Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I mean, they weren't even really like mainstays, in the overall movies. At least Wanda's like had a little more happen. At least she had one film, Ultron, where it was kind of about her, right? So I mean, even with her, it felt like we were just like, oh man, we mishandled these characters. Now's our time to fix this, rather than give the audience an interesting and refreshing story that pushes the MCU narrative forward. And it feels like we're finally getting that here. And so that's why I can forgive it, because it does make me realize I feel validated in all my criticisms of Marvel. I honestly do.
It feels good, doesn't it?
Get something like this. Well, it just makes me think that I'm becoming the critic I want to be. And as someone who is relatively a new critic, that's important to me. Because I want to give people, I want to give people the best I can give them so they can go and make a decision if they're going to watch the show or not. You've been doing this a lot longer than me, so I know.
I don't know about that, because I still don't know how much I refer to myself as like an official critic as far as that goes. I'm just a guy who likes talking about movies as far as that goes. I kind of left the whole critic hat behind. I'll refer to myself jokingly as a pretentious film bro as far as that goes. But also, I had to point out how much you just sounded like a superhero right there. It's just like, I'm finally becoming the critic I've always wanted to be. I'm like, wow, okay. Wow. I'm like, let me know if you start trying out any costumes. I mean, you've already got the theme shirts, so you're already 2 steps down the path of doing it. So I just had to bring that. I just had to bring that up. But yeah, that's pretty much really everything that I had to say about this episode of Loki. Again, it was for me the biggest thing, at least structure wise, right? Because I know for a fact that with all of these Marvel shows that are going to come out, I just know I'm not going to have a full picture and opinion until I see the whole thing. But I can definitely say off the bat, I think it's structuring itself within the 6 episodes much better than Falcon and Winter Soldier did. Each episode has its own pace, but also builds into the overall story in a really refreshing and satisfying way. And it doesn't have any bits and pieces that are problematic as far as that goes. It seems to have a focus. It seems to have an end goal. It set itself up, I think, for a really interesting next week episode, especially since next week is literally already the halfway point. So as far as that goes, even though we only got a little bit of the villain, I think it's going to be really interesting kind of seeing, for lack of a better word, 2 Lokis face off against each other. So unless you had anything else that you want to talk about, you wanted to move on to Bad Batch?
Yeah, all I'll say is, obviously let us know your guys' thoughts on Loki so far in the comments. Please subscribe to our channel. We're back on an upswing, baby, and it's all because of you guys.
We are. Almost to 350.
Almost to 350, and please, if you haven't already, help us get there. It's a statistical fact and this is a little foreshadowing when we talk about Dave later, talking about the analytics and stuff, but it's a statistical fact that 62% of anyone's YouTube audience has not subscribed. And so I got to ask you guys, if you're here and you're not subscribed, join us. It's only love. So hit the subscribe button,
dude. I like that. I think you gotta start putting that in every video now. I'm saying it right now. I think you're gonna have the stat. No, not just the stat. Specifically that stat. 62% of your entire YouTube viewership doesn't click subscribe. You gotta start cracking that in every single video. I'm telling you, the numbers, that's gonna mess with their heads. That's actually a really great strategy.
All right. Well, hey, we're gonna employ it right now. We want you to subscribe to us.
We want you
to join us. So,
oh my god,
man.
Dude, this is the best live stream yet. This is the best one yet. Let's talk Bad Batch. So it sucks because I wanted to talk more about this, but I do have a lot of other shows that I also want to talk about. So I'll be quick on this. Halfway point, and man, I don't want to take away too much because I already nerded out hard. So I'm going to try and stick to a more analytical side here with this episode, but. This just shows to me, in addition to everything else that we've heaped on the Disney Plus side of Star Wars and Lucasfilm for doing, this to me is just showing a step forward in animated storytelling, right? We're also going to talk about that when we put out our podcast on Luca on Monday, a movie that I was not at all expecting to like. I'll give a little bit of foreshadowing here. I was very impressed with, very, very impressed with, much more so than I thought I was going to be. And the thing that really impressed me about this particular episode of The Bad Batch is it shows that even though the first half of the season, right, because we got 8 more episodes after this, even though the first half of the season seemed very much like it was very individualistic, it seemed like it was following the initial structure of the Clone Wars, where each episode was kind of its own little micro individualized story. The way that it all kind of comes together here, as far as all of the micro plot lines building on top of another, it is masterful, to say the least. I literally, dude, I don't feel like I'm watching an animated show anymore. I really don't. And like, I have to. It's one of, and it has become one of those shows that I have to remind myself, wow, what I'm watching is animated. Like, and the crazy thing is that, like, I could watch it on my TV there. I primarily watch it at my phone at work, because that's just when on my lunch break, because that's when I have the time to watch it, because it just fits into that slot perfectly. And it's incredible. It's unfreaking believable. And just when I thought that, like, I had been emotionally ripped open again, like, we have this tense, action-packed episode filled with all sorts of, like, feelings and emotions, because we have Crosshairs coming back to come after the batch, not to mention a surprise cameo at the end that even surprised the hell out of me, which I'm like, okay, so we got Fennec Shand, right, and that was the cameo to the Mandalorian, right, that was the recency thing, so I'm like, okay, that's cool, but we got an OG Clone Wars character who, unlike a few of the others, has still not made his crossover into live action, and I think the only reason why they haven't done that yet is because if they tried to do Cad Bane live action, they wouldn't be able to do it. They just wouldn't, because all I'm going to say is, I know that you haven't watched the rest of the first couple of seasons of Clone Wars. If for nothing else, right? I know it doesn't start to get, like, super dark and serious until season 3, but if for nothing else, watch it for Cad Bane, because my God.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him in the moment, but it was obviously still a great scene, and this episode was so well done. And I went back, and there's a Star Wars YouTube channel called Star Wars Theory, who's, I don't know if you guys know this about him. He's the biggest Star Wars YouTuber, so you probably know, but I think he's big for a reason. Like, he just, man, he'll catch you up to speed on things if you don't know what's going on. And he's such a wealth of knowledge. And so I quickly learned about his importance watching the latest Star Wars Theory video. And I was like, wow, this is pretty badass.
Yeah,
It's kind of a
dude.
big deal then for these characters. And let me just say, man, to speak to the episode as a whole, I totally echo your sentiment of this does not feel like an animated show, and it's almost like your brain has to remind you that it's animated. And
I felt like I was watching like a behind. I felt like I was watching like a behind the enemy lines, like, actual live action war movie. Like, it was all the best fighting parts of Rogue One, but, like, as, like, the stealth mission, you know?
Yeah, I totally can feel that 100%. And I think it doesn't feel like an animated show for all those reasons you said. The writing being airtight, the chemistry between these characters being impeccable, believable, so tangible, just the way that they're sort of pitting old friends against each other, and the emotional attachment to every single aspect that each of these individual characters are going through. It's so masterful, but also, I mean, thank God Disney is at least, while they're not promoting it very well, at least you can clearly see a budgetary even increase from that last Clone Wars season to this season of the Bad Batch, because we opened up this episode with Kamino, and of course it's raining, because it's always raining on Kamino.
It's always raining. Is it ever not raining on Kamino? Has there ever been one instance, animated or live action, where we have seen Kamino where it is not raining?
Not at all. And it would make 100% sense that it never stops raining.
Of course.
But it looked so real. Like, it's an animated show, but it just looked so gorgeous, and I was just immediately enthralled. I was just like, this is more than just like a kid's show. Hell, this is more than a Star Wars show. Like, this is like some of the best television and some of the best art we've gotten all year. And to come from such a silly story where, you know, Filoni's not like creating something new narratively here.
Right.
But what he's doing is what I credit the man himself, George Lucas, for doing, which is, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? The hero's journey has been around since before the English language was created. But these people, these masterful storytellers, have such an understanding of the tools that Campbell gave them and the ancient cultures before them gave them, because that's really what Campbell did, right? He just dissected all of the pre-existing stories throughout history and put it in a way that us in modern times can understand it, and then gave it to, you know, creators to use. He like pretty much gave them like a, you know, how-to book is really what it is if you read it, which I thankfully I have. That's what a life-changing book. But like, it just shows like there's a beauty in simplicity, and Filoni is the master of that. And that to me as an artist, it's the hardest thing when you're writing a song. It's like you keep hearing parts, but then you do your edit and you're like, why did I add like 16 parts here? Like, the point got across with just the 3 instruments and the vocal. You know, it's like there's a true master knows when enough is enough. And Filoni definitely is proving with each episode, even slow ones that don't really push the needle too forward. I haven't been bored at all with this show. Like
No,
the quote
not
unquote filler
once.
was still awesome and a great way to start
Yes.
off my Friday. And
Yes.
I don't, but there's no reason to go into the specifics on the episode. I know we have other shows we actually want to crack into for the first time, but the overall sentiment I wanted to echo there, and I'm loving it. So,
Pun intended, right?
Not the Bad Batch.
Yeah, no, it's fucking incredible. This show, it's one of the best, and I'll just leave it at there. Again, put it this way: like of my 3 shows that are basically locked right now for my top 10 or potentially for my top 10 best of the year so far, 2 of them are animated, and that should just show you. But like, no, there are no qualms to me, right? But that's the whole thing, right? To me, there have never been qualms because again, I grew up with animation, and I was so privileged with the animated shows that I grew up with that, like, for me, for a long time, that wasn't like animated television; that was just television, And the fact that it's graduated to this level. You want to talk about validating? Oh my God, it just shows that, like, yeah, a format and a medium that I love so much can finally approach and kind of grow and change with the audience over time in a way that, like, so much of media is just like scared to. It feels like it has to constantly reinvent itself rather than just kind of embodying the elements that of the stories that it is that we love, but just kind of finding new ways to kind of update them. Because that's ultimately, to reflect your point, is kind of what makes the Campbell thing work, because the fact that it's the same structure been used for literally thousands of years of storytelling, and it still applies here. Like, oh man, like.
Yeah, no. So guys, let us know. Have you seen Bad Batch? We're halfway through. I mean, let us know what you've thought of it so far. Of course, subscribe, leave a like on this video, and hit that bell to get notified whenever we post a video or go live. And let's get into it. This is like the
let's get into it. Second half of the show, we got the recap section done, right? We got the Disney portion done. Now let's talk about some new shows, some new blood. So it's been a while since we've done this, so I wanted to play a little game with you first and foremost. Start to change up the structure of the show just a bit. Like I said, it's loose, it's free form, it's live. We can do that. So I wanted to gauge your point, right? So again, so I mentioned at the top of the show, we got 3 debuts. 3 debuts this week. That's like the most amount of debuts of anything we've gotten in a week in a long time, like pre the pandemic. So we got on AMC Plus 1 week before it drops fully on AMC, we had the premiere of the show, quite literally, Kevin Can Fuck Himself, created by Valerie Armstrong and starring Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek, debut season. Wednesday, on FX, and then the next day on Hulu, we got the 2nd season of Dave, the Lil Dicky show. And then literally just today, this morning, in addition to getting Luca and the new episode of Bad Batch, we had the premiere of of Physical. I'm really mad at because I literally just forgot the creator's name, but the premiere was directed by Craig Gillespie, starring Rose Byrne. And so, Chris, before we got this started, I wanted to know, what's the order in which you watched the 3 shows throughout the week? Just start off with that.
Yeah, partly because it was the first one that was available. I watched the first 2 episodes of Kevin Can Go Fuck Himself. Then I watched Dave, and then I watched
Physical. So pretty much the same order that I did. So because I watched Kevin Can Fuck Himself. Like, I wanted to see just how many times you can say that title on the show without, like, cracking up. Like, it's an amazing title. I think it was on Tuesday, right? A couple days after debut, because I was busy that day, because it was one of my weekends where I had Sunday through Tuesday off. So I watched that on Tuesday. Then I hit the premiere of the first 2 episodes of Dave on Thursday on Hulu, and then I watched Physical. That's why it's going to be the freshest in my mind, literally like a half an hour before we went live for this podcast, because I literally came home, I just sat down on my bed. Honestly, you telling me that we had to go live a little bit later, I was like, oh, thank God, I have some extra time to relax, and I just laid down on my bed for an hour, and then I watched Physical, and I mean, just beyond the overwhelming relief that I'll just get this out of the way. For the most part, all 3 of the shows were really, really good. I have my individual thoughts on each one of them, but for the most part, it was very refreshing just to see. I'm like, oh, thank God, we can still get great television. But the last thing that I wanted to bring up before we got into the shows individually is that just as a whole, it is so beyond refreshing, right? Because we talked about, right, the idea of peak TV and what it is that made that. And even though it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish that just because of the amount of content that these streaming services are putting out, literally AMC has its own streaming service now, that it's probably just going to run its stuff on like a week earlier, And I literally just saw another thing about Paramount Plus today. I'm like, oh, check out all the 90s Nickelodeon shows you can watch on Paramount Plus. And I'm just like, every time I see something for these streaming services, I want to groan. But the thing that I do like is that for the most part, everything that I've seen from them that's been good has not just been like kind of the passable mediocre bar. They've all been really interesting. They've all been really, really experimental, and they're all continuing with what it is that made peak TV so engaging and so thrilling for people like us, which is that they are telling the stories, and not just that, but experimenting around with the types of stories that we're used to in ways that movies will just not do anymore. So now we can get into our own individual thoughts on it. So I feel like it works well enough that we start with Kevin Can Fuck Himself, since that's the first one that we watched overall.
Go through the order.
Yeah, and I think that one is the most fascinating because so it has something in common with another show, right? With the another show, Physical, in that it kind of not mimics, but kind of, I'll say, borrows from the structure of a show that came before. But rather than Physical, which seems very, very similar to one show, Kevin Can Fuck Himself is quite literally playing off of, right, there's the long running trope of, you know, just the 3-camera sitcom, right? But it does this really interesting thing where it plays around, right, where you're following the lead character, right, portrayed by Annie Murphy, who is a sitcom wife, basically, at least for the first half, right? It starts off, right, she's in the typical 3-camera setting with the schlubby husband and everything, and they're making all the typical 3-camera sitcom jokes. And then the minute that she leaves him, it switches to like a single camera, like a typical like Mad Men, Breaking Bad single camera, peak drama era TV look, and we're all of a sudden getting like a look inside of her head, basically, for lack of a better word. And it does this really interesting experimental thing where it hasn't exactly broken down why this is happening or if there's any reason for it or if this is all just inside of her head. But whatever the case may be, like it's fascinating as hell. I can't necessarily say that it's won me over yet, simply because it's pulling kind of a WandaVision and Twin Peaks, and that I still have no fucking idea what's gonna happen. Considering just like the imagery of of what I'm assuming is some form of foreshadowing that we got in the premiere. But like, what are your thoughts on this, Chris? I mean, you're a big sitcom guy. You know, I know you watched way more of these growing up than I did. So like, I was really I had like kind of an idea of where your head would be at with Dave and Physical, but like I was really interested to hear your thoughts on this show.
Yeah, it's nice to get something that's deconstructionist that isn't over about the superhero medium.
For real.
Refreshing for the first time. But no, I mean, I think that this show it's not perfect, but it's
I agree.
And I think there's a band called Steely Dan, and while they have their hits and while people know them and they're famous, like they're not as big as the other classic rock bands, because I think that they do some songs and some albums that are like more for the people who get it, like the more musically in tuned audience. And so I think that that's why, while they have had big success, they only have 2 or 3 huge hits, but they've been able to have a career because they garnered more of a cult following for being a little more auteur in their style and their medium. And so I think that this is kind of like a filmmaker's show. Like, sure, I think some regular consumers will enjoy it and watch it, but I also think it's going to be very off-putting for a lot of people, and I can't see this breaking out of its niche. But if you're into it, and if it hits all the right buttons for you, you're going to absolutely love it. Because I don't think I absolutely love it, but what I do love is their ability to capture perfectly the medium that they're so clearly satiring. It's just, you need to understand, like, it's what I've been talking about a lot in the show lately. Like, you need to understand the art that came before you to build on top of it, especially if you're going to deconstruct it and satire it. And they really are showing that they understand what's going on. And it's such an interesting perspective that even though I'm not fully in yet, because I did think, spoiler alert, it was a little poor that we didn't find out her true motivation of eventually trying to kill Kevin until the second episode. I thought that the pacing there, the way the narrative was pushed forward there was a little lackluster. Like, we probably should have gotten that it's a pretty big deal. We probably should have gotten that in the first episode. But I think this wins a lot of points back by being just so goddamn creative. I can't help but love it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's definitely one of those shows where it's like the premiere is so bombastic that you're like, oh my God, am I going to be able to get into this? But like, it's just one of it just sucks you in, right? It does that thing that to me a show hasn't done in so long that it just completely original concept, right? Even if it is like, the one thing I will say is that as far as I'm like, wait a minute, like it's in the title and like with how they're characterizing the husband character, the Kevin character, right, portrayed by Eric Peterson. I did a little bit of reading and I'm like, okay, no, they're doing this specifically. It's very clearly riffing on the Kevin Can Wait show, like the latest Kevin James sitcom that was on like right before like his current show on Netflix, right? It's just they had a big problem with like what happened, how like just his wife randomly got replaced in the second season with like no explanation whatsoever. So
they brought back the whatever, the Scientology girl.
Yeah, I don't remember. Kevin James has had a lot of TV wives. It's kind of hard to keep track of them all.
They just completely dubbed that season 1 actress and
yeah, they did.
Big name.
They did.
And her.
Yeah, and they're very clearly doing a riff on. They're very clearly doing a riff on that. But the thing that I like is they have at least enough originality where it's like, okay, it's not dependent on. It's like, okay, you would have had to have seen this other Kevin James show in order to get the joke. And I'm a big fan of that. But as far as the rest of your points go, like I'm 100% on board with you with everything else that you just said. Like I was very, very confused after that first episode, and I needed to watch the second one before I was like, okay, now I know what this is about. Right. The only thing that I'm still confused at is the whole sitcom thing versus reality thing. It's like, okay, so like, is this a projection in her head, or like, or are they like actually like filming a sitcom? You know, like that's what I'm still wondering about. You know,
right? I think that is meant to be a bit marred and a bit mysterious, and I think that adds to some of the ride that we're on. And while it's confusing and while I want to know, I think it's because, like I said, while it wasn't perfect, it's so goddamn unique that I'm hooked. And
yes.
So I'm okay with waiting to find out. They really need to, they've set a high bar. I think the second episode offered so much more needed clarity. If this wasn't such a strange concept, the pilot could have easily failed. But it's just so strangely great that you have to be in for the ride. Like immediately.
Absolutely.
But, to answer your question fully, I think you're right. I'm not sure, but I am willing to be, brought along to find out. So
you're willing to kind of go along for the ride on this one, if you will, and see where it goes. Definitely. No, I'm in, definitely, and I want to see where the rest of this season goes. Even for me, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, even if this doesn't necessarily have the greatest payoff in the world, I could still see this being like a really, really engaging ride overall. You know, when it kind of inevitably has to do the thing at the end where they have to decide, okay, is this going to be a one and done, or is this going to get another season? And I definitely feel
in the role ttoo.
Oh, absolutely. No, Annie Murphy, I'll definitely admit. So she kind of made waves because she played the daughter character on Schitt's Creek, right? And was obviously one of, all of many things on that show's final season that came out that was awarded during the pandemic. She won the Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Emmy. And what's it called? No, I didn't watch a single episode of Schitt's Creek, but she proves right here that she's got a lot of talent, and I'm really impressed with where she's gonna go. I still don't know if I'm going to, but I probably got to see a couple of clips first to see if it's like gonna be like my style of humor. But all I'm gonna say is that I'm all the way in. And also, props to that Eric Peterson actor. Like I've never seen that guy before, but he does a really good schlubby sitcom husband. Like really good.
Him.
He really does. Like he's doing that thing that I love, where he's totally self-aware, but he plays it in a way where it's like it's not like, okay, like he's in on the joke, like of all the characters that like have their like almost, for lack of a better word, breaking the fourth wall, because that's kind of technically what this is, if you think about it. Like there's no like expressly talking to the camera or to the audience, right? But it very much is breaking the fourth wall when they're like the distinguishing between like the real world, as I'm going to call it, the real world versus the sitcom world.
Yeah, it is, and it's so. I haven't seen it done this maturely.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Right now, I haven't seen Twin Peaks. And, like, I know that every single surrealist show that comes out ever, like, people reference Twin Peaks. And I know, obviously, when I finish the works of David Lynch, who is one of my favorite filmmakers, like, I will have to watch that show. But now that I feel like we're finally, like, actually getting the shows that are, like, really, like, not just trying to blatantly rip it off, but, like, trying to take the cool techniques and apply it in new and different ways to these different stories, like, I'm in, definitely.
I was going to say, to speak to your point before we kind of got into each of the TV shows, and then after this, let's jump into Dave. But I was going to say, like, I definitely noticed it in 2019, and had the pandemic not come and sort of made me a little more shy to voice this. I really felt like we've been on a bit of a TV renaissance upswing.
Yes,
For the first time since, I think, honestly, I'm going to say Breaking Bad concluded.
I agree. I agree.
You know, and it's really good to be back. Like, I think shows like Succession and Barry and Watchmen really, they were the torchbearers, and then the pandemic year, of course, put a stop on it. But it just shows, like, had we not had that year, had we gone straight through, I mean, TV.
We would have had some
right now.
TV. Really is like it's. I love that. Like even amongst the myriad of streaming shows, there are still some of those that are like able to stand above the rest. And like now that we're finally getting back to normal, we're seeing kind of the myriad of content that was supposed to come out, and it's only going to get more rich and diverse. It only makes me more excited, honestly, to see what's next. So speaking of things that are next, so the next show, this is actually a returning show for one of the few shows that was able to get out its entirety of its run before the pandemic. And I'll say definitely it was one of the more well-received shows, because I definitely remember that a lot of those shows, like kind of with the exception of like the last season of BoJack and Clone Wars, a lot of those shows that came out before the pandemic like were not good, because we had to sit through third seasons of Ozark and Westworld, which were just like, and that was before the pandemic that we got those shows, to put that in perspective. But Dave, oh god, Dave, the Lil Dicky show. This was a show that I'll admit I understand immediately why the first season was as well liked as it was. My whole thing is that for somebody who had just come off of watching the first two seasons of Atlanta, and I'm like, okay, we're getting another FX show about a rapper. And they're going for the kind of the surrealist, goofy approach, you know. But I'll say that it definitely made its mark as far as differentiating itself, and that it's not going for the surrealism as heavy as Atlanta was. It's definitely going for more of kind of the straight-up goofy comedy approach. I will say that it's enjoyable and is well done. I'll definitely say it's well done. There was a lot of really good stuff going on with that first season. I couldn't get into it fully because I feel like I had a lot of problems with the portrayal of the main character, and we'll get into that more when we discuss these first two episodes. But I'll say definitely right off the bat that with these first two episodes that dropped on Hulu, it immediately reminded me. It immediately kind of did that thing that I really haven't seen from a sophomore season since Atlanta, which is that it's really willing to go in like a totally new and a lot darker direction. Like they're definitely getting a lot more introspective with the Lil Dicky character. But I will say that a few of the problems that I had with that first season are still there. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this before I kind of like dove into those more.
Yeah, totally. If I asked you, am I a Lil Dicky fan, how would you respond to that?
I will say that I did not hear of him until I'd watched the show. But after having watched the show, I've gone back and listened to his raps. And I can say right now, he's probably one of the best rappers I've ever heard. It really is awesome. Not even just because of like, necessarily like his music is necessarily like fantastic, but mostly just like because let's be honest, rap is not necessarily about like the music, it's about like the freestyling and the ability to like improvisation. It's essentially like improv to a beat, right? And that's essentially what it is. Exactly. It's kind of like jazz that way. And right, like to me, like I've heard a decent amount of it. Probably, obviously, I'm not like don't pretend to be a rap expert at all, but I've heard a decent amount of it. There's some that I like more than others, but he is definitely just as far as like kind of the improvisational loose nature and how his stuff. But it's like it's hipster thing. That's the thing. He's a hipster rapper. That's the thing I think that like makes him so compelling as far as that goes, because everything that he says, it's just like typical hipster nonsense, right? Because anything that hipsters say, like it has the potential to be really deep and subversive, but most of the time it's really just kind of lofty, and typically the people who are saying it are really just saying it to sound smart, right? We both know that because we hung around hipsters, so we know that type of dialogue is a thing, most definitely. But like the way that he says it, like kind of presented in rap format, it kind of really works just as far as that goes. So that's just how it engages me on like kind of the artistic level with the music.
Right, and I'm just going to say he's one of my favorite artists of the modern day, let alone rappers. I mean, I think the man is brilliant. I've been with him since he started on YouTube.
Wow, back in 2013.
Yes, I remember the first 3 videos, and I remember the Too High video being hilarious, and I remember when he got the Trojan condom commercials, and that's when I realized, like, whoa, this dude is playing a part. This guy is the ultimate of ultimate method actors. That's what it is. You got to understand. That's what it is. I mean, he is committed to the bit. So when he talks about the joke And when he talks about the end of the season, when he pulls his nuts out on stage and he gets arrested for exposing himself to minors in an all ages show, and he did it for the art of the bit, and he's banging to the cops like, please don't arrest me. It was for the joke. I committed to the joke. That's more than like, that's who he is. Like, he is one of those actors, artists, personas that like you don't know if they're joking or not. But like once you get into it, you realize like he is always this way. Like he is perfectly this way. So it really makes you think like the man has figured out his persona to a T. And his music, it's so like it all just plays into this character we see on the screen. So if you don't know that going into it, I can definitely see how with the first season, it's his first time trying his hand at writing this character who's been playing in short form content, short films, commercials, music videos, now trying to convey that to an audience who obviously the music side of things, there is a fair amount of cinematography and videography with the YouTube being the ultimate, like the new MTV and the new TRL. But obviously he was more of a musician, and that's where he made his name for himself, which allowed him to venture into TV. But like, for me, who has all that background information, I didn't need what you needed in that first season. And I think now it seems like you're finally understanding this character.
Yes, definitely.
Because he's playing himself so accurately in this show to who
as
I
the
have
character,
known as the celebrity.
Yeah.
That for me, I wasn't confused, but I do think that the first season was like a 7 out of 10. And right now,
that's a fair rating.
Right now, I'm going to say that this is the most improved player of the year.
I agree.
These 2 episodes
I agree.
alone,
Really good.
Not only has I think he found his because he's the showrunner, he's the head producer. Like, this is his passion project. He hasn't put an album out since 2017 when he got the FX deal to write this show, because so much of his original music was going to be in the show. So he's literally changed the trajectory of his musical career, his income, for this show, only dropping various songs here or there over the past like 4 or 5 years, 5 years now, which is insane. So like for him to commit this hard, I respect so much, dude, because like he is, while he in the show is like when he's with the girl and and she brings her back and he's trying to recreate that moment where they're doing the auto-tune singing and he's playing the same beat that he did with his girlfriend, and she's like more so like kind of like, hey, like, you're funny and I'll hook up with you because you're funny. But like the people never see him as someone who's serious, but like they just because they don't get him, he's like the typical artist who like no one understands even though he's reached success. And you finally now have had enough of that baseline from season 1 to establish it in season 2 and build off of it. So I think like for you who doesn't know it, it totally makes sense that you feel that way. And I had to really separate my fan musical brain from my critic brain and be like, yeah, well, you know what? It's not a perfect show. Even I get it, but I can see a lot of people having issues with that first season because of this. But season 2, the clarity is skybound. And I'll pass it off to you. I just want to say one last thing before we talk about this a little longer. What they're doing with this show, talking about the struggles of the artist, the whole, need to create the views and, manipulate the algorithm. Like they're talking about the music industry, but they've kind of found a way to like deconstruct all of entertainment. Like I just made a joke earlier in this stream about a statistic because we want you to subscribe because that's how important it is to succeed. And it's amazing how he's able to break that down and show even at his level, you don't get those views, you're here today, gone tomorrow. It's something other artists of yesteryear didn't have to deal with. I think it's an amazing.
As far as everything that you say about like kind of the show itself and what's going forward, like those are the parts to me that I feel like I gravitate towards, and that's why I'm kind of like still sticking with it and why I was like still willing to give it a chance, because like I'll admit you're 100% on the money with me as far as that goes, because you're right, I was not familiar with the kind of the character, kind of what he does as far as that goes. It was mostly just like kind of his rapping that impressed me as far as that goes, and kind of his freestyle loose style. But the thing that impressed me the most is like that I would get these at moments in the first season that were like really incredibly dark and really poignant and really self-reflexive. The problem is there didn't seem to be kind of this overall trajectory. It kind of felt like, oh, spur of the moment, oh, here's this. Oh, now I'm going to be really sad. Oh, spur of the moment, here's this. And it was so bouncy and reflective and all over the place that every time there was like a nugget, right, that I could latch onto, it's like, oh, it felt like it was quite literally here again, gone tomorrow. But you're 100% right. Now that I'm like 2 episodes into the second season and I'm starting to like grasp more, like I'm familiar with the character, I'm starting to kind of see all the strings and all the pieces coming together. And as far as everything that you said about the music industry, you're 100% dead on, because even Atlanta, which I love, is not at all concerned with like kind of breaking down and exposing like kind of the industry in a way that like really that in the ways that this show is, because it's really impressive to me. You're right, how this show is like kind of bringing about like kind of the new modern day of like, yeah, what is it like to be like viral, like kind of capturing that feeling of like being famous, but like, you know, and just like kind of the instability of fame in general. You're totally right about that as far as that goes, and it really is what's making me excited for the rest of this season.
And on top of that, I think the maturity and the cast and the writing, it's just so much more apparent, and I really see a growth. Like, you know, the sophomore season is an important season. It
really is. It truly is make or break.
And I think it's been so well received. I think the people who liked it originally, they're still on board, of course. But I think like this maturity gives it new legs. And I'm just curious to see what kind of future this show will have, because now I think it's safe to say it will have at least another season.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like Atlanta is the first show in a while that I've seen that's made it to 4 seasons, because they're doing the thing that Barry's. It's really weird how those two kind of like intersected, those shows, but like they're doing the thing that Barry's doing. Barry kind of unintentionally because of the pandemic, but Atlanta was already planning on doing this before the pandemic, which they just shot seasons 3 and 4 together, and like just with the short and kind of compressed amount of episodes that they're able to put out, like I'm sure that this show could pull that off no sweat, especially since it was like, again, for me, like it was kind of overshadowed as everything else is with the pandemic, but like this show could have its moment to shine as far as that goes.
Yeah. And hey, Dom, guess what?
What?
We've gotten 2 subscribers on this.
Hey, there we go.
So
there we go.
I just want to
we got to start covering this show now as a means of like, in order to cover like more of the YouTube analytics stuff that we always talk about, but like on the show itself.
No, I just want to say, like, I know that sometimes we have these shows that are like quieter and the chat's not necessarily going off. It's all right. We're just glad you guys are
good.
Here.
Yeah,
good to know you guys are here.
Yeah, we see you. We see you. Okay, how about that?
Exactly. But yeah, no. I'm just hoping that we don't take a step backwards, because
I agree.
Took a huge step forward in these 2 episodes.
Yes, we really did. We really did. And it's so funny too, because I thought they were going to do the thing in that second episode where they brought back the girlfriend character from the first season, and then they didn't. And just like the way, like with that's the thing that I think that I love about all 3 of these shows that we've seen so far. And 2, and it's kind of the thing that all 3 of these have in common is all 3 of these, you are so inside the main character's head, and you are with each of these 3 main characters through every single step of the way. Like the way, like just the amount of claustrophobic feeling they were able to replicate when they were in the back of that taxi in South Korea was insane. As far as that goes, how they were able to replicate it. Dude, it was insane. I'm like, holy shit, this is legitimately nerve-wracking. I'm like, what is happening?
And you know why? It's because that Gaeta character and
fucking MVP of that show, by the way, fucking really, Gaeta. Oh my god,
his name is actually Gaeta.
His name is actually Gaeta. Every line that he has is gold. The line where it's like, dude, you were recording that the whole time. It's like, bro, I grew up in the hood. I'd like to videotaping cops is second nature, man.
Yeah, that was awesome and
fantastic line. And you know that but like 95% of his dialogue is improvised. So like, there's that too.
He riffs and
absolutely.
Actually, that's confirmed. Andrew Santino, every time the new season of Dave comes out, he has the whole cast come on his podcast. So Whiskey Ginger's doing the rounds right now.
Oh, Andrew Santino, another guy. Yeah.
It's the only time I listen to Andrew Santino's podcast, but I actually really enjoy Andrew Santino.
He's awesome in this.
Because he's not doing what he normally does. He's not a comedian. Gaeta's the comedian. He's the straight man for the first time. And it's really cool to see. I just think as a comedian, even though he's a younger comedian, it shows why the guys like Joe Rogan, why the guys like Joey
he's so talented. Yeah.
Tout him.
These guys love him. And dude, I'm telling you, I know I brought the show up to you before. But dude, I am telling you, 2 seasons, 20 episodes total on Showtime. For the love of God, dude, do yourself a favor. Watch I'm Dying Up Here. I'm telling you, that show was robbed of its chance to be one of these shows that we're talking about. It is so fucking good, and it still pisses me off because that was that one, like, that cult show that, like, I would text Dustin back and forth with, like, all the time when we were watching it for those first 2 seasons, and we were both heartbroken when it got canceled because, oh man, so good. Well, Jim Carrey executive produces it.
That's pretty cool. He doesn't just do that for anything.
No, he doesn't.
But he is one of my favorites.
That was when he was, like, weirdly sort of making that comeback on Joke, because he also had that kidding show that he did that got canceled after 1 season, but I heard was also pretty good.
I heard that was pretty good too. I don't know what happened there. But the last thing I'll say, because we were talking about that Gaeta taxi scene.
Yes.
It's like one of the things that this show did was all of it right in the first season, and all of it being we established the ensemble, we got the relationships down. Little messy, a little sloppy, but at the end of the day, it's a sitcom, and so at least if you build strong characters in your first season, you will have legs to go off of. And so, like, they did such a good job with Gaeta and his sort of self-esteem and the issues he was dealing with last season that it all instantly came back to me, and I was like, oh my god, this guy struggles actually with, like, mental instability. Yep. And this is
that bipolar episode of his from that first episode still haunts me to this day. Like, that was so accurate. That was such an accurate portrayal, and, like, the way that episode built from beginning to end, it was, bro, shudders still. Because I watched that whole 3rd season in 1 sitting. I don't know if I told you that. It was weird. Quick side tangent. When I went to watch it for the first time, for whatever reason, because the way that the service that I was watching on screwed up, I ended up watching the last episode first. And I hate when that happens because it's happened to me a couple times, and it pisses me off every single time that I fall for it. But I ended up watching the last episode first, so I ended the first with him rapping for Charlemagne, thinking that was the first episode. And then my friends told me, they're like, moron, that was the last episode. I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. But I went back, I watched the first 9 episodes in 1 sitting. Like, I just started, I'm like, you know what, these are going by so quick, I'll just bang them all out. And I did. I banged out all 9 of the first episodes in 1 sitting. And so some stand out to me more than others. It was kind of all of a blur, but man, that Gaeta episode, goddamn.
Yeah, no, look, Dave season 2, huge improvement. I cannot wait to see where it goes, and I'm very glad that it's back because it earned its 2nd season at this point. Absolutely,
it did. So let's get on to the last show of the evening, the new Apple TV Plus drop. Dude, they've had no losses. They're 0 for everything so far with wins with all the shows they put out. I'm gonna watch Morning Show soon enough because we have a release date for season 2.
I can't wait,
Dude, I didn't watch a single episode of that first season. That 2nd season trailer was still giving me shudders.
I don't say this lightly. It's the best Reese Witherspoon performance I've seen.
And you didn't watch Big Little Lies either, so because she's been making it. You did watch it for? Okay, I didn't know that you had. So you think this is better for you than Big Little Lies?
She's better in it. And
bro,
that's hard to say.
That's tough.
When we started the podcast and we got busy and we never covered that show on the podcast. I will go back to it, but she so far season for one season, right. She was still great in Big Little Lies.
Because I think that's the reason why she missed out on the Emmy nom and why Aniston got it. Like, Aniston was always going to get it because she's top billed. Reese Witherspoon, even though she's co-lead, she's still second billed. But Reese was up for a couple different things that Emmy season. Because that Emmy season, that was Big Little Lies season 2 for her, which that whole situation was kind of a mess. She was also in that Little Fires Everywhere miniseries on Hulu that Kerry Washington ended up getting nominated for. And then she had this. So she had a lot of stuff going that Emmy season. So that's probably why she kind of got locked out as far as that goes. Plus, she'd already gotten nominated for the first season, and in my opinion, was robbed for that first season of Big Little Lies. But I'm looking forward to that. But man, Apple's been on a run so far. Like, I'm still confused as to they need more traction. They really, really do, because freaking Morning Show getting all the noms that it did, it still feels undeserved because like that show only ended up getting what? I mean, I don't know about the technicals, but like the drama it missed out the drama nomination because Mandalorian missed the drama nomination, so it only got the 3 acting nominations, right? For Aniston, Crudup, who won for supporting. The 4 because Carell. That's right, Carell was nominated. So the 4. So Carell, Aniston, Crudup, who won for supporting, and then Martin Short was nominated for guest actor.
Yeah, he's great.
And but so I didn't hear anything. But look, For All Mankind was fantastic. Ted Lasso, even though again that was another thing like Dave, where the first season I'm still having to, I'm really looking forward to the second season when that comes out. We've got 2 new shows coming out this year that just both look insane. First of all, that Mr. Corman show that I told you about, the one that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's going to be in, A24 is co-producing that, so there's that. We had the big Sundance, like the big Sundance movie Coda.
Is that the first A24 show?
No, it's not.
Oh.
They've got a couple. Do you know the Gerard Carmichael show was A24 produced that, right?
I did not know that.
So A24 produced the Gerard Carmichael show. They've got a show that they're producing with the Safdie brothers coming out. I don't know when it's coming out on Showtime, but I am so looking forward to it, called The Curse with Emma Stone. I think it's a horror show, basically, where she's like an HGTV reality star, but who basically like ends up in a haunted house. Like I have heard nothing about that show other than it's in production, and it is like one of my most anticipated shows. So they've got that going. They've got this Mr. Corman show coming out with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. You've got The Shrink Next Door coming out with Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd, which I know it's a hard sell with anything with Will Ferrell, but I'm telling you, just based on the story alone, like it's not, even though it's 2 comedy stars, like it's pitched as a dark comedy, it's not a comedy. This story, not at all. It's like downright freakish and disturbing, because it's like, to put that in perspective, that show is going to be like a reverse What About Bob, basically, if that makes any sense. But
well, that's good, because my favorite Will Ferrell performance is All Things Must Go.
Yeah, and you gotta watch. Did you watch Stranger Than Fiction?
No.
You gotta watch Stranger Than Fiction. I would say give that one a chance too. But that one's another series Will Ferrell. But all of this is to say that Apple's kind of crushing it right now, as far as they are just delivering quality hit after quality hit after quality hit. And so we're here to cover our last show is their latest show that literally just dropped its first 3 episodes today, Physical. And I'll say that right off the bat, it had kind of, let's say, the probability of being another Glow, just based on the trailer. Just, it's so obviously resemble Glow emblematically, like just from the color palette and the set design, just the look and tone of it felt like it was embodying Glow just from the trailer. But after watching this first episode, dude, it's Glow on on actual 80s cocaine, because it is so interpersonal, so in a mental state, right? But so about like that personal obsession, right? That director who directed this premiere, Craig Gillespie, just specializes in. He specializes in that, right? He directed the Cruella movie recently. He did I, Tonya a couple of years ago. He's doing the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee thing. Like, this guy, like, this specializes in that, and it is all over this premiere, which was just oozing with craft all the way through. Like, what were your thoughts after like the first episode of Physical?
Yeah, I'm hooked. I can't wait to just get through Luca tonight, which, I mean, I was kind of excited for, but it's like all I'm thinking about is watching more Physical.
Right. Yeah. It's tricky.
I mean, I love. I want to say I love this character because I really feel for her, but I love how she's playing this character.
Right.
Because he's not the brains, you know. She gave him every good idea he's ever had, except he's just such an egotistical maniac, the husband, that he understands that. He doesn't understand that, and he just thinks, like, you know, his comparison. She was basically his rock, and without him, he'd be nothing. But he's like the greatness, and she's like the baseline. You know, he's the melody, and she's the baseline. Where I think it's a little more shared than that, and I love how believable it feels. You know, it's almost like she's brilliant, but he is such a big personality that she ended up sacrificing everything for him. And I think it's pretty interesting too that we haven't found her believing in herself the way that we do right now. And I hope that happens. And because I just want to see her like really take charge and kick him out, and like, you know, just like become like, you know, the ruler of her own destiny, because it doesn't feel like she is right now. Yet it's so strange because she created him, it seems. So it's a really interesting dynamic. And on top of her personal monologue being something that normally annoys me because it's always corny, generic, easy to do. I think it's weak filmmaking, but something about this version of it, this implementation, makes you forget about all the bad examples of it. That's for sure. And the last thing I'll say is the aesthetic, the vibe, the mise en scène.
Yeah.
It's so
It's dope.
masterful.
It's dope. It really is the next level of Glow, because Glow did it fantastically with Netflix, but like it really does feel like a matured, stepped up version. Like the camera work is so much more fluid and dynamic. There's so many more close-ups. Like the set design, even though like it shows itself in some moments, like it's just the camera work is so fluid that it's a blink and you'll miss it as far as that goes. Like it's so engrossing as far as that goes.
It's very Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino-esque.
That's it.
And I was thinking about a lot. I was like, man, if I say that, I need to be able to back it up, and I think I can. I think I can, because it really is just something I have not seen in a while from a period piece like this. Like it's solid, dude.
And the thing that I love. And the thing that I love too is that the show is this pilot episode alone is so good that it's able to do kind of the monologue, kind of staying in her head while at the same time kind of getting an idea of what the story is going to be. But unlike Kevin Can Fuck Himself, which needed to get to its second episode before it could like really before it could like really fill you in on what the goals were. Right? I think it's going to be a really, really fascinating journey, kind of just as we go out throughout the next couple of weeks, like watching these two shows like bookend the week. Kind of, it's going to be really, really interesting to see that. But I think I think the key difference is that like we definitely get a sense of like what this character is about. Like we definitely get a sense of like, okay, this character was definitely somebody before. This is a character who's very insecure about her aging process, about her look, about her weight. And she needs an outlet. She needs an outlet of some kind. And she's been relying on consuming junk food and bulimia to the point where she's drained their bank accounts. But now it seems that she's going to find a different outlet in ballet. And it's just it's so interpersonal. Like that's the thing I love about all of these shows that we've watched, not just this one, is that they're all so interpersonal and they're so character driven. I'm just like, yes, this is the stuff that I've been missing. This is the stuff that I've wanted. And it was the things that TV was doing so well for so long, kind of before the pandemic came in and wiped that out. But it's so refreshing to me that they're back in full swing as far as all of that goes.
Yeah, and I would say, guys, keep your eyes peeled for the show. We're definitely going to be covering it more.
For all of these shows, I would say.
And I was going to say, every show tonight contributes to my working theory of the new TV renaissance. I mean, even the Disney one. Even the Disney ones.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It really does. Dude, all I know is our top 10 TV list for the end of the year for 2021 is going to be awesome. Because I just want to read off some of the shows. Just some of the shows. Give our audience a little bit of a preamble here for some of the shows that are coming out later on in this year. So we have coming out with release dates.
And
Kevin Smith.
Tom reads it. Just know I was nervous at one point. Like, is there going to be enough good shows?
I was too, dude. I remember having this conversation. We had this conversation on the podcast earlier this year because it all goes back to that conversation we had on our hike last year in the middle of the pandemic when we were talking about shows for the first half of the year, and I read them off, and you were like, "Oh, maybe there weren't as many good shows available." But these are just some of the shows that have release dates, right? The Masters of the Universe Revelation animated show from Kevin Smith. Which did you watch that trailer?
Not yet. I mean,
I'll send you that trailer, dude. It is amazing. It is amazing, is all that I'm going to say. Ted Lasso Season 2, Transformers War for Cybertron, the final chapter, Chapter 3, Kingdom, Mr. Corman, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt Show on Apple TV, Reservation Dogs, which is a new Taika Waititi show that's coming that just looks strange and insane. Nine Perfect Strangers, which is another show that Jonathan Levine, who is the director of 50-50, The Whackness, The Night Of, and Warm Bodies, is directing. That is based off of a book that looks hella fascinating and interesting. What We Do in the Shadows Season 3, the third season of American Crime Story that will be entitled Impeachment, that will be covering the Bill Clinton impeachment, starring Sarah Paulson, Beanie Feldstein, Clive Owen, and Edie Falco. Why the Last Man, The Morning Show Season 2, and The Shrink Next Door, to name a few of the ones that have confirmed release dates. And there was another one too,
Afterlife Season 3 as well.
And Afterlife Season 3. We also just got a clip today of The Witcher Season 2, so that means we're definitely going to be getting that at some point. Dude, it's going to be a good year. It's going to be a good year. And we still haven't even gotten the release dates yet for Succession Season 3, Wheel of Time, and the Cobra Kai Season 4, and The Lord of the Rings show, and Book of Boba Fett, And I just heard that His Dark Materials is currently filming right now, season 3. So I really, really hope they're done in time to air that at the end of the year, because I don't want to have to wait until January to watch that. Oh, things are looking good. Things are definitely looking up for TV. Definitely.
I can't wait, man.
Dude, it's gonna be good.
The TV and Talkin
we are putting the TV in Talkin TV, but that's kind of part of the reason why the Variety Hour exists, so that we can continue to talk about the shows that it is that we love, and it means that we don't necessarily have time. So this kind of like creates the perfect instance, right, where we officially have the Talkin TV podcast, but the Talkin TV podcast, I'll admit, that's definitely going to be more so for the movies, basically, and this show will definitely be more for the TV shows, basically. But I'm glad that we have it. It allows us to hit both ends of our medium in ways that kind of, we didn't have a chance to before, and that is, of course, all thanks to you guys. Thanks again for everyone that tuned in tonight for this episode of the Talkin TV Variety Hour. Thanks for continuously keeping to come back and support myself and Chris and everything that it is we do. We love doing it, and we just want to entertain you, and you guys continue to prove such good and loyal fans. Just click the subscribe button down below and click the bell next to it if you want to keep have us produce more content. Words overall. You can also keep up to date by following us on our social media presences at Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV Podcast. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me pretty much anywhere. You can find the Talkin TV Podcast, and you can find me via my handle, which is at Christian Evanko. Evanko spelled EVANKO. I make music, which you can find on all of those different platforms through either some of my posts or through the link in my bio. It's pretty easy. It's pretty right there. Just click it and you'll be able to find some Spotify links, Apple Music, the whole nine. I'm on every service. So I hope you check it out, as well as my second podcast called Talkin' with Andrew and Chris, which is a little bit more of my music side. We talk about life, music, and everything in between. Also available through the link in my bio. Hope to see you guys there. And of course, please follow my good friend Dom, the movie nerd, and Dom, tell them where they can find you.
At Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, where I mostly just post pictures of my haircuts and my cars and occasionally an insightful quote, but mostly to just make jokes and post memes. But it's my personal pages, so I can kind of do what I want with that. And hey, I'm almost still up to 1,000 Instagram followers, so that's cool, I guess. I have no idea how. I don't know. I guess I'm just that good. But anyways, follow me there. You guys know what to do as far as that goes. Thanks again for tuning in to another great episode, and continue to come back and watch these excellent TV shows with us, because, man, they are really, really fucking good. 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies and TV shows. We'll see you guys next time.